You start over again. Sorry about that. There was no sound. So let me intro back in here. Welcome to this Sci-Fi DevCon event organized by Microsoft MVP and Microsoft Certified Trainer Regional Lead Brian Gorman. The Sci-Fi DevCon event, also known as This is the May or May the 4th be with you. I want to thank him for having me again this year as a presenter. I believe this is my third or fourth year presenting at his event that he puts on every May with community members providing helpful presentations around various topics of development and cloud and cybersecurity. And with that, I will be speaking today about building cyber resilience and a risk-aware team of heroes with the CyberVengers. So let's get started. So as I stated, not to, just to restate, this is building cyber resilience and a risk-aware team of heroes with CyberVengers. And we will talk about the CyberVengers here shortly, but let's get into the topics of things here. My name is Dwayne Natwick. I am a CEO and owner of Captain Hyperscaler, a certification training and consulting company. I have been in many different roles in my career, including a technical training lead, a global cloud security lead for Evident, a global systems integrator and managed security service provider. I am Microsoft Security and Azure MVP and an AWS community builder for security and identity. I also author and provide live training for learning providers as well as my own company. And I am certified to teach in Osaka, AI Certs, Microsoft, CompTIA, EC Council, Global Development Council, and as well as I'm APMG third-party accredited to train as well. You can reach me on my social media links provided. Happy to connect with you. I've also authored 3 Microsoft training guides, exam guides as well. So happy to speak with you today around our topic of cyber resilience and building a risk-aware team of heroes. Let's get down to it. First off, any hero is going to need to have a mission. So we are going to state what our mission is and what we are trying to accomplish. We are going to look at the current area of maturity and readiness and how to look at that within your own organization. Then we're going to bring in our CyberVengers and talk about how they can rescue you and how we can how each of the CyberVengers can help you build a team and build a plan of heroes. And the last couple here, if we are not in a current culture of risk awareness, how do we change the culture and change the results? And then that's going to lead ultimately to a call to action. How do we build this team of heroes, and how ready are you as an organization to get to that point? So let's jump right into what our mission is. Where are we trying to, what are we trying to accomplish? What is building a cyber resilience and risk awareness, and where does that fall, and how do we accomplish that? Where might be some gaps within our own organizations, and how do we tie all of that together into a organizational approach? So, common cloud security risks. Most of you know these have to do with multiple areas, and I've kind of touched on 4 major areas that are really critical to how we need to protect our organization and how our CyberVengers are going to help us. Unmanaged attack surfaces being the first one here, where we have exposure of our environment, and how are we monitoring our environment. I do a lot of security talks. I've been over the last couple of weeks, I've talk for the Microsoft Security Fundamentals. I did, and as well as Azure Security Engineer. I've been teaching those courses over the last couple weeks, as well as ISC2, CISSP, and CGRC. You don't know, if you don't know what's going on in your environment, you can't protect it. And that's really where this unmanaged attack surface is. What are we monitoring? Are we monitoring anything? If we're not monitoring it, if we aren't looking at activity, if we aren't diligent in our approach to monitor and manage our devices, our applications, our application code that we're developing, our physical environment, for that matter, and training our people, which we'll get to here in a moment, we are not risk aware. We're not cyber resilient. We're really just getting by and waiting for the next breach is really what it comes down to. So that's number one priority of our mission is we need to start to monitor our resources and understand what's going on within our environment. And that becomes even more and more important as we move more towards cloud native applications and everything being exposed somehow in some way to the internet. Even if we're using cloud resources, we are moving through and dealing with our information out there in some way or another. How are we protecting against any type of breach? The next one is misconfiguration, and it kind of ties into the attack surface, because if we are building cloud native applications and we are not going through a secure development process where we are checking, making sure we have secure code, making sure we're protecting our secrets and keys and not exposing them in our code, and we're not doing constant evaluation and managing from a CI/CD perspective that our code maintains a level of security, then we are again continuing to do ourselves a disservice. We're not doing due care and due diligence around our applications and protecting our data. I'm going to kind of go around the bend here and talk about data breach. Data breaches. What attackers are looking for is data. Whether it's personal identifiable information, health information, financial information. They know that is the digital asset that we care about as organizations. So they know that that's where they can get to us. And that's why, ransomware attacks are so popular, where, they keep us from getting to our data, distributed denial of service attacks, things like that. Those are important. Phishing attacks and malware types of attacks, where it's redirecting our users to give credentials to attackers. Those are all things that we are very concerned about, and we need to maintain our diligence of where is our data, how are we protecting our data, and how are we classifying particular data and keeping that segmented and away from the public access of data. And then finally, the last point here on this slide is human error and just overall lack of awareness potentially within the organization around our human beings. And according to Gartner, through 2025, 99% of all cloud security failures will be due to some level of human error. And that could be our users putting in their credentials on a phishing attack. It goes along with the misconfiguration aspect of things, the unmanaged attack surfaces. They all tie in, and that is really a key point. And we'll get really into that as we start talking about building our risk-aware team of heroes, is because we want to make sure and decrease that number from 99% to something lower. But understand, as an organization, when you are building cyber resilience, you can put control after control after control in place, but there's always a potential insider risk of human error, and we need to always be diligent to that potential. And so how do we, what do we need to think about? And these are kind of 7 steps here to reduce risk. And we'll talk more about each of these. Everybody talks about, our red team and our blue team. And as we've moved to, cloud-based technologies, purple team has moved in there as well. Some of the ones that we don't talk about as much is green, yellow, and orange, and really the white team aspect of it all, right in the middle of the wheel as well. And these are what I would say the 7 steps are for reducing risk. Automation, infrastructure as code, and these are in no particular order, because if you've ever attended a class of mine or a talk of mine, education and preparedness is always number 1 on my list. I'm just kind of going around the wheel here, and we'll explain more about the wheel in a moment and where all these fall in. Offensive security tactics, proactive integration of offensive and defensive, the defensive security tactics, the digital forensics and the investigation aspect of things, and then finally governance, compliance, with continuous monitoring and analysis, all work together to reduce risk as the organization. As we go through this presentation, we'll talk more and more around all of these 7 steps, because this ties into our CyberVengers and our team of heroes that are going to help lead the way for you. Went too far. I like to put this slide. I put this slide in here for a particular reason. When we think about the previous slide, the previous couple of slides, the NIST Risk Management Framework, SP 800-37 Revision 2, really puts a nice wrapper around those areas that we just talked about, that have to do with, preventing a data breach, preventing misconfigurations, monitoring and managing our attack surface, and training of our organization, because this puts a nice framework around how you look at bringing a new system online, bringing a new application online. Like I said, right at the center of it all is preparedness, is understanding where the risks are, understanding what our risk appetite is as an organization, and what our organizational processes and procedures are to prevent risk. And those are all things that we need to consider and understand. And if we don't take all of that into mind, and then as we understand where we fall in terms of an organization, then we can understand how we categorize our assets, how we select our controls, how we implement them, and how we assess the effectiveness to bring our system online. And then it's a constant monitoring after that. So this is a circle where we look a lot in terms of development and DevOps as that infinity circle. It's really the same thing. If we are getting to this monitoring phase, that's really where we then continue that infinity loop of monitoring, managing, and improving our security posture through executing of plan of action and milestones of things that we've identified during assessments that are weaknesses, and then adjusting and mitigating those weaknesses and those risks to our organization. So the next step is, are you ready? And we were talking, we talked about kind of the steps of this presentation and where we're going. We have our mission as our heroes. Our management, our executive heroes need to understand what we need in terms of building our team, and how is our team going to effectively manage those risks and those four key areas of risk that we talked about in terms of our mission and what our risk really is. We want to address those four those 4 key areas and manage them through those 7 levels of protecting against risk that we talked about in the color wheel. So are you ready? And in order to be ready, the first and foremost is, how do you determine your readiness and what is your risk? You need to have a clear vision, and especially if you're moving into the cloud, how do you determine that you're ready to move into the cloud? And this goes along with risk as well. And I use the cliche here, and I'm not one that really loves cliches, but failure to plan is a plan to fail is just a good one. If you don't plan and you don't understand what your mission is for moving to the cloud, what your mission is, and where your tolerance is for managing and avoiding risk or mitigating risk, we really are not ready for what we need to do. We shouldn't be moving to the cloud for for cost savings, but we should be planning, and we should look at the cloud as a enabler to decrease risk, not something that increases risk. Because what it's going to make us is more effective as a company. And most of the cloud providers, if you move into their environment, provide a lot of enterprise level tools that if we're a smaller business with shallower pockets than Fortune 100 companies and multinational governments, we can use these tools and the same tools that they're using to protect their organizations as well. So understand that and understand where the business and technology mission is. Yeah, the technologists may want to develop, be faster to develop and develop applications in the cloud, but where does the business stand on that? If from a technology perspective, you're building a plan and building a business case, it must speak to what the business goals and strategies are, and that aligns as well to the risk of it all as well. What is the risk? And you need to speak to that risk and let the business understand what the risks are and how this is going to address risks to the organization. What is your maturity? So, do we, and this goes back to the previous slide, do we have a risk management strategy from the top? What is the organizational risk management strategy? What is our risk tolerance? Those two are key things that we need to talk to and understand from an executive level what their tolerance is. That's how you build your business case for proper security, for building a risk-aware organization, for risk awareness training, for all of those things. If we don't have a good hold on risk management strategy and risk tolerance, we cannot protect our organization. And at that point, if we don't know those two things, risk analysis and risk handling is a non-factor, because that risk tolerance is really going to guide how we're going to analyze risk, where our risk lies. We can tell the organization that we have these risks, we've analyzed these risks, here's the impact and likelihood of those risks, but we can't handle those risks unless we know the risk tolerance. And so we build our business cases based on the impact and likelihood of a risk. But until we know the risk management strategy and the risk tolerance from the top, from our executives and our board members or presidents and owners and things of that nature, we really can't go any further than just analyzing and providing what the potential is, and then going from there to ultimately the risk handling is never going to happen, and we can't build a resilient, cyber resilient organization or risk awareness without actually doing some level of risk handling. So the risk management process really falls into these four phases and 4 stages. And again, framing the risk, planning, understanding what our risks are, then spread out to our ability to assess what those risks are, how we're going to respond to them, and then the continuous monitoring aspect. If we don't, my 2 biggest things to bookend any process or procedure that is taking place is that if you don't plan, which frame falls into that planning aspect of, defining and understanding your risks, um, looking at them and identifying them in our organization. And then as we come around, the ability to monitor and improve on a constant basis are very key aspects to defining risk and how information flows. And you can see it's constantly flowing between all of these areas for our ability to manage our risk effectively. As I've said multiple times already here today, is that the risk strategy and a risk-aware organization and cyber resilience starts at the top. I've had this talk, and I've talked to various cyber experts on my podcast about cyber resilience and how it's an organizational approach that is guided by a culture that is created by the organization. And again, the organization's risk strategy and their risk tolerance really is the starting point of it all, as well as the mission and business processes there in the middle. So the organization guides the risk strategy as well as the business mission. And how does that align then with the processes and procedures that we have in place to guide us in terms of our enterprise architecture for security and privacy, and how our information systems and environment of operations handles risk? That is the tactical aspect of handling risks. Then there at the bottom, it's a very broad and wide. This is a triangle for a reason. There is much more that needs to happen once you have that strategy funneled down to the information systems and information organization. What feeds up is that feedback loop for improvement and for identifying new risks and new business cases for handling risk that feeds up to the organization, may have an adjustment or change to a mission or business process as well, that needs to be, again, taken to our organization. And this is not done in kind of a vacuum where it's identified, and it just kind of goes down the line and back up the line. There are business cases that need to be addressed. There are also the ability for the need for change management and configuration management processes when something changes in the environment that creates a new risk. We find a new vulnerability. How are we going to address that? We don't just address it. We need to make sure we are documenting throughout the process, and we're building business cases as necessary for new controls to address new risks. It needs to be documented, and we need to understand from a configuration and change management perspective how we're going to handle it. And again, evaluating and doing a level of risk analysis throughout is going to be important. And that feeds us into the next part of our maturity. And what our maturity is doing that risk analysis. And what is risk analysis? This is a perceived risk to an asset, and what that risk is when an attack actually takes place. So we've identified a risk. If that risk becomes an actual attack, what is the impact to our asset or assets? And anything in terms of risk assessment, it could be a tangible asset, it could be an intangible asset, it could be physical, it could be technical. When we're doing a risk analysis, we're doing risk analysis to our people as well. An attack might be and isn't, is not limited to, a fire in our building. That's a risk. That's a potential risk within our organization. That fire may not take place because of an attack. It might not be arson, but if we have a fire, how are we protecting human life? Human life is our most important asset to our organization and really to humanity. Ultimately, we don't want a risk to cause a problem, and vulnerability to take place that causes loss of human life. Secondary is our digital estate and our data, and protecting, even personal identifiable information protects our people as well. Next piece of risk analysis is inventory and placing a value on all of our assets. Again, and that could be, like I said, could be tangible. How do you put a price on human life, or on the exposure of a potential, of a personal identifiable information to a human being? That's negligible, right? I mean, obviously, to some point, that's that you can't put a price on it, right? There's no price. We want to protect that at all costs. That's why we put fire safety equipment in, and locks on our doors and things like that to protect ourselves. But once we inventory and we know everything, and again, the value, might be invaluable, might be, something that's that is unqualifiable, then we need to understand that we need to document all of that in that inventory. And then we look at the likelihood of that vulnerability being exploited. And you can really then start to prioritize your risks in your analysis by making these decisions in terms of that impact, which is how serious is the risk, how much is it going to cost us, that cost of the asset, and then what is the likelihood it's going to happen. And if the likelihood and impact both fall into this extreme box, then we ultimately, those are ones that we're going to prioritize as number one. And then we kind of go from there to prioritizing down in terms of, what's unacceptable as an unacceptable high, if it's very likely but moderate risk, or if it's likely with a major risk, we generally will categorize those as the second tier of priority. If it's very likely but minor risk, or goes unlikely to major risk, those are lower, and then so on and so forth, getting down to minor and moderate risks and their likely or unlikely aspect of likelihood. So we take those, and that's really where we build our risk analysis and kind of build our documentation in terms of how we're going to build a plan of action and milestones for addressing those risks. And really, ultimately, where we're going to invest our money. And that's really what it comes down to is we're making sure that those unacceptable risks, the extreme and the high, are the areas that we are putting the most resources towards to make sure that we're addressing them, and then we address them first and foremost. Then if we got money left over, or we make determinations on what we're going to do, we make our risk decisions and our responses based on those areas, and really the impact, or where the impact is to the organization. And again, aligning this, we have our values, we have potentially quantitative values, the actual, dollar or monetary value to all of these. And we also have other non-monetary areas that we need to consider as well, like, potential risk to human life, or to our organizational users or our customers if personal identifiable information is lost, or if there is any potential reputational damage, which again, if there's some sort of breach that causes personal identifiable or personal health information to be exposed, that's going to affect our customers and our people, as well as create a problem with our organization from a reputational perspective, because there's a loss of trust that takes place there as well. So responses to risk. What are the responses to risk? When we've prioritized the risk, we've aligned our technical side of how we would handle those risks, and what that cost would be to the business impacts and the business tolerance to risk. So how do we evaluate that? And there's a lot of equations that help us to budget that, and I'm not going through that here today in terms of what the annual loss expectancy is versus where you look at the impact and the rate of occurrence versus the cost of the asset, and then you can balance that against the control that comes into play. And that's how you can do a quantitative and kind of show the numbers in your business case. But I'm not going through that today. I'm just really going through the theoretical aspect of it. And there are four main responses to risk. There's mitigating the risk, there's avoiding the risk, there's accepting the risk, and there's transferring or sharing the risk. Something we never do because this can get us into legal situations if there is a attack that takes place and we've decided that we didn't address the risk, and we decided to what we would do is as far as ignoring the risk, which ultimately would mean we didn't document that risk, and we just maybe we had an idea that risk was there, but we never put a risk treatment on it. That is where we could be legally liable to certain negligence that we didn't do proper due care and due diligence within handling a risk. So mitigating risk is really where the main cost perspective goes. Actually, mitigate and transfer both. Generally, you'll have a cost associated to it. Mitigating risk is we're actually putting a control in place. So we've decided, we've got a risk at our perimeter. We're going to put a firewall in place, or we're going to build into our environment some additional network segmentation and things of that nature. Or we're going to do more frequent penetration testing to and vulnerability scans. And there's a cost to doing those, especially if we're bringing third party in. Those are investments that will then decrease our potential risk. Implementing firewalls, encryption, access controls, as the example on this slide. Those are where we're building a business case for control, and we're identifying, here's the cost of and the impact of the risk, here's the cost of our control, and hopefully that control cost is lower than the actual impact of the risk, because that makes our business case a much easier sell. If they're more equal, or the control is a higher cost, that's where we need to also look at the business case aspect of what's the reputational damage, or what could cause us in future revenue if this risk is realized as well. I'm going to come back to avoid and accept here in the middle and come down to transfer risk. This is when we get cyber insurance, or we've decided that the risk to maintaining licensing and controls for our on-premises data center is becoming too cost prohibitive. We're going to mitigate to the cloud or migrate to the cloud. Sorry, not mitigate to the cloud. We're migrating to the cloud, and the cloud-based the cloud services and that physical infrastructure protection that we find is cost prohibitive for ourselves to do is going to go towards and transfer to the cloud service provider. That's one way of transferring or sharing the risk, and cybersecurity and cyber insurance is another way. And then the two that really would be closest to ignoring the risk would be avoid and accepting the risk. But we're still documenting a response to that risk. That's why it's not ignoring the risk. Avoiding means we don't implement what is creating that risk. We don't use a particular technology that has a known vulnerability. We were presenting this and we were going to put this in place, but there is too high of a risk in putting this in place. So we're not going to do that. We're going to put a pause on that. We're going to figure out a different way. So we're avoiding that risk. We're avoiding that vulnerability entirely. And then there's the acceptance of risk, which comes along with that risk analysis of, okay, the cost of control is here and the impact of the risk is here. We've gone through our due diligence and and evaluated, that potential impact, and the low likelihood of that impact has determined that, what, we can handle and we can recover from this potential risk if it is realized within our environment. We are going to do that. Example, and that's kind of like potential of a natural disaster. If we are accepting the fact that that we're on a floodplain of a river, but that river only floods, 10, every 10 years or something like that, or we're building our data center in a hurricane area, or tornado based area, or an area where we might have an earthquake, but we're accepting those risks that might take place. A tornado might impact our data center, but the likelihood of it is slim. Lightning strikes, things like that. We accept those risks, and we may put some mitigations in place, like a disaster recovery and business continuity plan, as a mitigation to that risk. But we ultimately are saying, okay, for now, we're okay with it. We'll take that risk, and we'll deprioritize it for right now, and accept it. And that is a valid response to risk, because if something does happen, and if that if that natural disaster takes place, and we've documented that we've accepted that risk, it's going to hurt us as an organization, but it's not going to. But we are doing our due diligence and our due care by having a response to that risk. So how are you preparing? How are you preparing for your mission, and how is your maturity? All starts with executive level support of risk and security awareness. And the risk ownership needs to be throughout the organization, and we need to build a risk aware culture. And that goes along with all and creates a level of cyber resilience and risk treatment among everybody. It's not just at the executive level, it's not at the mid-manager level, it's down to Joe and Jane user that are on the internet and on email and accessing applications. We need to all understand that, hey, if that email comes across that says your Amazon account has been compromised, click this link to reset your password, that's probably a phishing attack. Or if the CEO of a Fortune 100 organization's sending you a personal email congratulating you on a great quarter, click this link to put the information in for your award, that's probably not the case. And we need to do some double checking around that, and not just ignore these types of attempts to harvest information, but also report them and let our organization know that this has come into our environment, and it is a potential risk to our overall organization if anybody clicks these. So they better be pulled off of the inboxes right away. And also, how are we training and building our risk aware culture for them to recognize these potential things? Because unlike us that are doing talks and look and understanding this on a daily basis, there are people within our organization that might not be tech savvy enough to really understand that. And to get to that point, the CyberVengers are to the rescue. So how are we going? We identified earlier on the 7 steps to reduce risk, and how are our CyberVengers going to help with these 7 steps of automation, infrastructure as code, education, offensive security tactics, offensive and defensive proactive integration, defensive security tactics, and governance and compliance with continuous monitoring and analysis. How do these all fall in, and how can the CyberVengers help you? The CyberVengers are here to go through and provide you with the team of heroes to build your team of heroes. So build your cyber team of heroes. We have, like I said, most people understand red team, blue team, and more recently purple team as defensive, offensive, combination teams, and to do to look for do penetration testing, do for digital forensics, all of those. But the green team, yellow team, orange team, and white team are here to help as well. And we're going to cover these CyberVengers here and where they fall and how they can help you. So let's introduce Emerald Developer. Emerald Developer is our green team, and the green team focuses on and I put it in quotations, the DevSecOps, the security within the development process. Securing software by design, automating deployment of control and the controls in place, the constant monitoring, the security of the CI/CD infinity loop is what Emerald Developer is here to help your organization and build that strong green team. And there, at the bottom of each of these is some recommended training and certifications you can approach for building that green team and building that risk aware and that cyber resilience organization. Next up is our Golden Architect. Golden Architect are for those of you that are using your Terraforms and your Ansibles, your GitHubs, your Visual Studio, your integrated development environments to deploy infrastructure as code. And Golden Architect works very closely with Emerald Developer because you're developing applications and you're building the infrastructure as you're developing those applications as well. So having security design and architecture and secure frameworks, secure landing zones, all of those things is what Golden Architect is going to help you with. And you need to build. Golden Architect's looking for a team of heroes within every organization to build those areas and to help you gain confidence in those areas. Every organization should have an Emerald Developer and a Golden Architect. Next up is the Mandarin Mentor, and the Mandarin Mentor I feel is one of the most important heroes you should have within your organization. This is the training and education of your organization, the user and risk awareness, building and helping and working with your IT department, having to have phishing simulations that help to build the awareness and understand the risk and change the risk culture within your organization. Response team training and analysis as well. How does your team of responders also, how's your blue team and your purple team work with within the simulations and within the training to continuously work with the users when they report risks. Mandarin Mentor provides a bridge point between our user environment and our technical environment and our organizational culture change overall. And that is why I said planning and education is a very very important aspect, if not the most important aspect, to building cyber resilience and a risk aware organization. Next up is the red team, and we know the red team. We know Crimson Crusher. Went extra slide by mistake. Crimson Crusher is our offensive tactics. These are our penetration testing, our vulnerability scanning and exploitation. That they find the vulnerabilities and then they try to exploit them. They're finding the gaps and holes that hopefully before attackers can exploit them. They're our certified they're our ethical hackers. They are our threat intelligence group for finding those risks. And very important aspect of our organization, and very important piece to our team of heroes. Next up is our Violet Guardian. Violet Guardian's a little bit younger and newer to the team of heroes because this has become more and more as we've built more automation, we've built more artificial intelligence and machine learning within our organization. We've started to merge some of these offensive and defensive tactics, and Violet is the bridge between the red and the blue team, and really is the glue between between our offensive and defensive tactics, and working together with them, with our SIM and SOAR solutions, to help understand and be proactive, to find vulnerabilities and find risks within our organization, and also putting tools in place to find those indicators of compromise and handling those with automation, and helping our blue team work with the more comprehensive and complex types of attacks. And that brings us to our blue teamers and our Sapphire Defender. Our Sapphire Defender is here to defend and to build and to do our reactive aspect to an attack, understanding the attack vectors, the MITRE attack vectors, do levels of system hardening to decrease the attack surface, and then if for some reason an attack does take place, Sapphire Defender is going to do the forensic analysis to respond and recover and do the post-mortem of a potential attack to avoid those attacks from happening again. And again, blue, sapphire, violet, and crimson are all very key to our overall monitoring and management aspect of things. So when we talk about our mission and our key aspects of what that mission is, our blue, purple, and red team is helping it to decrease that risk of the unmanaged aspect, the unmanaged groups, and protecting against the data loss, and making sure and monitoring against data loss, where Emerald and Golden are helping out with that misconfiguration. They're making sure that those configurations are secure, and Mandarin is helping to make sure that those users are trained and that the organization is trained properly to avoid those and to decrease that 99% human error aspect of things. Now Emerald and Golden are, for the green and yellow team, are helping out as well for avoiding the misconfigurations and that aspect of human error as well. But the user level and the IT understanding of what types of attacks come through, our emails and come through websites is what Mandarin is going to help us with. And then our final hero is Professor GRC, and the professor here is going to help out, and really falls into, if you think about the risk management framework, and you think of the prepare in the middle of it all, Professor GRC is the same here. Professor GRC is our white team, and they are here for compliance, governance, risk management, process improvement, the analysis of our risk, and to work with all of the rest of the heroes to bring them all together to analyze the organizational risk. They're working much higher up at the CISO level and the director level of managing, of working with our team of heroes to decrease risk for our organization. And they're working with the organization to understand the organizational approach, the organizational risk tolerance, and analyzing how our technical resources and the rest of our heroes are going to prepare us going forward for managing risk and managing and building that cyber resilient organization and the risk aware team of heroes. So where do we go from here? We hopefully are building our team of heroes. Maybe we aren't building our team of heroes. So how do we change the culture to change that result? And how do we get our organization to understand that we need this team of heroes desperately to protect us and to govern over us and manage over us? And it starts at the top, as we pointed out earlier on. The risk management involves different levels within the company to interact and have, to understand what risk is and understand at each level what that tolerance to risk is. As information systems people, our tolerance to risk is very low. We don't want to. We are very risk averse at that information systems level. Our organization might feel that they are risk averse. They might feel that they have a low risk tolerance. But if you evaluate it and you talk about how much it costs to address certain risks, their risk tolerance might broaden a little bit. So understanding from the top to bottom what that is and driving that in a circular motion where the information, the people involved in the information systems group, we're talking about Crimson, Violet, and Sapphire are all the heroes that are going to drive that mission and drive that up to the mission and business processes that get put in place, that Emerald and Golden put in when they're putting new systems in play, that Mandarin is training the organization on overall, and Professor GRC is bubbling up to the top and presenting to the organization that it needs to be there. And that interaction from top to bottom must be accounted for and must be properly assessed in terms of what is necessary within our organization. And a supported risk strategy and cyber is going to support the risk aware culture. So again, it's going to be informed by if there's a strategy, it's going to guide the mission and business processes. It's going to guide the architecture. It's going to guide the information systems. So we need to take the approach here of constant communication throughout these tiers within our organization, throughout every level of our organization, to then build that strategy at the top that then feeds down to everything else and feeds down to what our what our Emerald developer and Golden architect are doing for the architecture, and what our operations team of Crimson Crusher, Violet, and Sapphire are all doing for our protection and our constant monitoring and improvement and addressing and understanding what new risks are coming up. And ultimately then the training and governance of it all that Professor GRC and Mandarin mentors, your Mandarin mentors, are doing to have those frameworks in place and build that cyber resilience and risk aware culture within your organization. All right, next up is, we've talked almost for an hour now about the risks, what the mission is, what our maturity level is, and how we build our CyberVenger team of heroes. What is the next steps in the call to action? So where do we go from here? What do you take from this particular presentation that's going to help you build your CyberVenger team of heroes? Invest in your teams. Invest in your teams. It's going to, with training, with certification, with just levels of understanding, is going to help to change the culture and change the results within your organization. It's going to also build organizational maturity. And this is from all over. I mean, this is at different roles within your organization, having them understand artificial intelligence and machine learning, having them understand cybersecurity and the potential risks of you being on the internet and being on a internet connected device, and how you're accessing emails and links and things like that all become important. So develop, educate, train your people. It's going to help with retention of your people within your organization. Don't be afraid that if you build somebody up that they're going to leave. If you're investing in them, they're going to understand that, and there's going to be a level of loyalty to that. And then start with your origin story. What is the first part of all of this, of all of this mission and of all of this risk that you need to address? Is it development? Is it forensics? Is it penetration testing? Is it understanding what needs to be in place in terms of cloud security, and what's the risk to migrating to the cloud? Those are where you start organizational wide, and then you start to build each of your team members and each of your heroes their own saga. And what does it come down to across all of the organization, or each of your heroes? Who needs what training, and what training is that necessary, and what hands-on experiences do they need? All go into this team of building your team of heroes. So I would, I recommend you to do that. Each of the slides, pointed out some specific certifications that go along with each of the heroes. Build your origin story, build your saga, and that will build ultimately your security and your overall cyber resilience and risk aware organization. Some companies that I support in terms of training resources. Not to commercialize this, but these are great partners of mine, and can be great partners to you, and can be areas in which you can help to build your team of heroes. And finally, again, learn more about the CyberVengers. There's a video about the CyberVengers and about every one of them that is premiering on my YouTube channel here in about after this talk. So feel free to go to that link and find your team of heroes as well. I will post that in the chat as well for everybody to find. And it's actually on the YouTube link, not the LinkedIn live feed. Email and connect with me. Feel free to reach out and connect with me. Ask me any questions. I'm available on social media. And again, thank you very much. Since this is a recorded feed, that obviously you can ask me any questions through social media. But I want to thank again Brian Gorman and for the Sci-Fi DevCon event. I love these, the science fiction theme of all of them, and it's always fun to kind of put something every year together for his event that's a little outside of what we do on a usual basis for a usual event. So enjoy the rest of this is the May the 4th be with you with the Sci-Fi DevCon topics and presentations. I know there have been some great people that have already presented up to this point, and there's more to come for the rest of the May. So with that, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and have a great rest of your day.